Hi, welcome to the texturing workshop. So this week we're gonna be working on texturing like a hammer. So previously, before this class, I made a hammer in Autodesk Maya, similar to basically as a follow-up to last week's class, and basically separate them out into different parts. With them separated out, I then go and individually send or export out the individual bits, because what we're going to be trying to do is add more detail in order to get more out of the textures later. So I created a folder and then naming them appropriately, just export them as an OBJ format, so that we can take it later on and we can add more detail to it. So I'm just going through one by one each bit and then exporting that together, or separately, I should say. The naming plays a big part, because later on when you kind of try to recognize which bit's which, do you know what I mean? It makes your life a lot easier. So once I've done that, I hop into ZBrush, which is by Pixologic. And this is a really handy tool for digital sculpting. You can use software like Blender and even Maya itself for certain sculpting attributes, but my preference or my weapon of choice is ZBrush. So in ZBrush, I'll just import in all the different bits that I recently exported, and you'll see them hop up. So I basically create a new subtool and import over the top with a different part of the hammer each time. And as we see, we're starting to get each bit of our hammer kind of taken through to ZBrush. Once they're in, I'll save a copy just in case, because sometimes these programs do crash quite a lot. And then from there, I'll just start subdividing, which is basically just adding more resolution to it so you can apply more fine detail to it. Right. Once it's added more resolution, there's an option called Dynamesh, which is really cool for basically remeshing your model to like a higher or lower resolution and kind of distributing the polys equally so that you can do a lot of fine detail later on. So I'll run that same process with each of the different parts and just go through that bit. So the hammerhead takes a little longer, but as you can see, it's a little more dense, which is what we want. Similar deal with the handle. Really dense, which is what we want. Subdividing this too. So I like the patterns on it. I wanted to keep that just so we have something different. And trying again the same thing at the bottom as the last bit. This all plays a part in the texturing process. Just because as much as you want to get the texture on, you want to try and catch as much of the detail as possible from having a high resolution version and baking the detail from a high model onto a lower one to make it look basically more detailed than it is, but still run efficiently within the game engine. So I'm just using the mask tool at this point. I'm just masking off certain sections and inflating and deflating certain bits. So this part is quite good because you can just cut and like try things out, see what's working and what's not working. So the moment I saw that the squares weren't working at first, so I'll just add some kind of beads just for variation. So So I'll just inflate it by 2, which is all right, but maybe it's a bit too strong. So I'll just try about 1 this time around. Okay, so the handle isn't going to have too much detail, I think, because I like it as it is. Just kind of wanted the smoothness. But most of the details are going to come from the hammerhead and the hammer top. So activate symmetry so that I only need to do it once. And then kind of mask off certain areas. Oh, need to change back to the old mask. Mask off the areas that I don't want to be affected. I want it to kind of stay slightly separate. Just making sure everything's kind of lined up. Then using the different mask tools. So now I'm using a mask curve, which works as a curve and also a straight line, depending on how you use it. So masking off the ends, because I only wanted the pattern to go in one small section for this time around. So I'm just kind of defining the section. Anything that's dark is going to be masked off, so that means that it won't be affected. And anything that's brighter is what is going to be affected, essentially. So similarly, I'm going back to the inflate tool and just kind of making an indentation. I also wanted to add like a little pattern to it because it's working as it is, but I don't want it to be as plain because the hammerhead is like the focal point. So what I'll do is I go into Photoshop and I start to create some patterns. So creating one earlier and basically going to duplicate that across so that it fills the whole page. Make sure it lines up just about. It's hard to get it completely perfect, but you do the best you can. So just make a copy of that and just bring it up just for speed. So you're not doing it each individual one. Yep. And then once that's all right, I save that. Let's quickly check actually what it looks like in reverse, but save it first. So inverted doesn't look as good, so I just keep it the way it is. Just save that. Just find the location that's good for it. So I'm in an after school folder for you guys. So once I find the location, I just give it a name and save it as a PSD because ZBrush likes to read PSD files. Similarly, I just made one earlier as an ACM sign just because I want this to be an ACM hammer. So I'll save that too as a PSD. Okay, once I'm good with that, which is basically just a black and white image, I go back into ZBrush and just bring it over. Make sure I'm on the mask, the proper mask tool, bring in the pattern, and then just kind of draw it out in the same way. This time it's just taking shape of that stencil. Now it's not repeating as much as I want, so I'll go into the Alpha Modify tab and just tile it over. Because we made that pattern before, we made it specially to be tiled, which means like it will repeat quite nicely over and over and over again without any seams, or with the littlest seams as possible. So that works a bit better. So having created that pattern, it's kind of going to the deformation tab and again inflate or deflate, I should say. And there you go, adding more fine details. So similarly, just kind of going to create some patterns. Nothing too crazy, just straight up kind of rectangles and dents and grooves. Real simple, but very effective stuff. And then one for the main body of the hammer. Okay. So I'm liking that, and an overall shape, and maybe one for the top, except instead of an indentation, let's try something different. So mask off the top. Cool. And then because the mask goes through, we've got to make sure that we catch the bottom two because we don't want to double down on that. And instead of deflating it, we inflate it. So it should go extrude out by 1 unit, which is slightly so. So now that we've done the other pattern, we want to bring in the ACM one because we want to make sure this is ACM hammer. As you can see, we still have the tile on. So we need to go back to the alpha and make sure that it just only shows once. Then we draw out the ACM mask for our logo. And again, because it repeats on the other side, we don't want that. So we use a mask to just kind of rub that out. So it's not there anymore, it's only on one side. And then we isolate the side without the mask, bring back the ACM mask and redraw it on the other side. So it shows the right way around on each side. So if I bring everything back, deflate it, let's go -2, let's give it a bit more. So we've got ACM on that side. And now we'll try to do something with the top as well. So it's good to have some sort of pattern on it. So we try and match up the mask circle on the top. Just because we don't want it all the way through, we just want a certain section. Okay, with that done, we deflate it again as well. So it goes in slightly and bring back our pattern texture. This time we don't really need to tile it because the top is bigger, so we could afford to get away with the extra size. So we draw out our mask. And then deflate that. It can go a bit bigger. There you go. So added a little more detail to our ACM hammer. So now we just run the process of decimating it down. But actually, just probably add a bit more detail for certain bits. More grooves in between bits. Just checking the size as well, making sure that it's all good. Cool. So once that's there, maybe add one more in the middle. It would be cool to break it up a little bit more. Okay, with that done, go back to inflate again, -1. Have it slightly so, but enough so that you can see it. Okay, save again, just because we know that it does have a habit of crashing, or any 3D package. So saving often is often your saving grace. Excuse the pun. So if we look at the wireframe, it's super heavy. We can't get that in a game engine or do much with it. So we need to use a program called Decimation Master. And what it basically does is it'll take all of those polys and it will decrease it, but still keep the same shape, fidelity, and detail. So if you notice at the top, it's counting down, or it's telling you, counting up, should I say, telling you the percentage of processing that it's done. So it's basically having to think about, I have this many polys and I want to bring it down. How is it going to go around that? And this is what this process is. You definitely need a good kind of graphically powerful computer in order to run this, because it does hammer the hell out of your computer. And also having as little programs on at the same time as possible so that your processing power completely goes to this and is faster. So we're nearing done. Very exciting watching progress bar. So when that finishes, it's going to let you know at the top, and then you hit decimate current. And as you can see, it's completely changed it. But then we come out of wireframe and it's the same, but it's less resolution. So what we do is we keep running that back, and it gets faster every time because it's working with less, it's working through less, right? Keep running it back until we start to notice differences, but we want it to be as light as possible poly-wise, but still keep that same fidelity. So it's looking all right. Let's try running it one more time. So we're starting to notice difference. So when you see that, then you know that you reached the point where you don't need to do it anymore. So then I just quickly uncheck the group and export it out. Make sure it's named appropriately so you know which one to bring in. Run the same process on the other bits too. Just checking the wireframe to make sure it's down as much as possible as well. So that looks like it's just about on the cusp. So we'll export that out as it is. Make sure that the group is unchecked as well. Name appropriately too. So just run that same process with each component. And because the hammerhead was the one that was the most heavy in terms of polys, the rest should be fairly quicker. So that looks cool, that's low enough. Still keeps the fidelity. Uncheck group, export that guy out. Make sure it's named. This one's quite heavy, as you can see. It's slightly longer. And decimate that guy. Process current again. Decimate that guy too. So getting a little bit closer. I mean, it looks quite heavy still. I'll try it a little bit more. See when we start seeing notice a difference. That looks quite, so it's not so good. So we need to go back on uncheck group and export out. So this one doesn't seem to have the same name as taking the document name. So we need to have a think about what it was called before. So a lot of hammer names, and this is why it's important to name it as appropriately as possible so you can come back and find it. So I was thinking, should I just give it a new name? But then I won't remember it, so it's hammer handle. So we'll stick with hammer handle high. And then lastly, we'll do the detailing. All the detail bits on the hammer handle. So that looks all right. Not too bad, quite low still. Try one more time. Nah, that's going a bit too far. So uncheck group and export this out. And that's the last of the detailing bits. So now we have a whole high resolution version with a lot of detail exported out in low poly form, or low enough so that we can kind of bake out the detail, but not lose on any performance. So before we bring it back in, we still have our low poly one in Maya, and we need to add UVs to this. So quickly combine it, delete history, and run an automatic map on it to quickly try and salvage anything that it might kind of do with ease. So as we can see, the hammerhead isn't really done to the best. It's kind of split up a little bit. So we need to manually do that. Okay, don't need that, so we can delete that. Rename it a little bit later. Go back to UVs. So select it first. So open up the UV editor, which basically just shows you how it looks. So imagine roadkill. That's what UVs are. It's just like the map of basically the model spread out. So we give it any old mapping, move it to the side. Okay, and we go into edge mode. So similar to modeling, except we're cutting in the UV seams in order to dictate how it looks like roadkill. So we can do that once. So now you can see it on the actual model, you know, it kind of unwraps like that. So that being said, we just separate them out because we just cut them, and then we unfold it. So sometimes unfold tends to mess with other components too. So might have to do it a different way around. So unfold shrinks those dudes. So we select them both, unfold along, and unfold along with that one too. Double check against a checkerboard texture in order to make sure there's no distortion or skewing happening. Obviously there is on the hammerhead body, the main part of it, because it's kind of wonky. So what we need to do is separate it. So select it, basically select the faces in UV mode, select it in the model mode and separate it out so it's its own piece. From that point, we just go into UV, because it's on its own, we can run the unfold on it alone and it will behave because it's just only messing with that section. We rotate that around in order to just be more readable. And then we combine them together. Weld the points so they're not separated out. Maybe not too much. That's made a proper square. Yep, and then we just scale them in. Okay, and now this part is more like Tetris, so we're just trying to fill in, make sure all of this fits into one square. So Just checking how things fit. Those seem to take up a lot of space, so filling up with those with both ends is a bit difficult. So similar to Tetris, you've got to move stuff out, create more space. So we work backwards, essentially. Make it everything slightly smaller so it's scaled together. So move that group to the side, same with this group, move that to the side. Bring that one in. And now the game begins. So that can go there. This can go here. And go down a little bit more. Move these guys to the side. Seeing how they fit. And then this guy can be separated out, go a little bit forward, and then this can be moved up slightly. So nothing is even close to overlapping. With that done, so we got our UVs and our low poly version. Right, so then we rename it. Okay. Hide it, and then start importing our other bits. So because we name them everything underscore higher, we know which ones to bring in. So bring that down. That one too. So I've got the take off wireframe. Bring in the hammerhead. So some stuff's, there's some artifacting going on sometimes. That's okay. And, so which one are we missing? Handle bit. Top of the hammer as well. Cool. So that part, just clicking it, that's an easy fix. So rather than leave that, let's just quickly fix that. It's just welding one point. And that one's fixed. So what we want to try and do just to separate it out is just to give them different, so group up certain bits, give them each a material. Doesn't matter about the color at this stage, just more so you know. Naming them too is quite a good habit to get into. Okay, once that's done, select them all and just combine them together, right? And in order to prepare for Substance Painter, you need to make sure it's named appropriately. It likes lowercase names, so that's the thing to remember. And then again, naming is important because when we come back to importing this, we're going to need to remember the names. Okay, so with that done, we open up Substance Painter. This is a pretty handy tool for getting textures onto your model. We're not going to deep dive into it too much. We're just going to basically give it a foundation. So if you select your low poly one, which so closing all the other files. So computer isn't using up tons and tons of memory. Okay, so we're good. So it's complete hammer low, we find that, open that up, and on one side you'll have the model, and on the other side you'll have the UVs. So you can either paint onto the model itself or onto the UVs. So what we want to do is make sure that we get the information from our higher resolution one onto the lower one. So we change up the map size, make sure it's pointing at the high resolution one, and uncheck the maps that we don't want. So we don't want that. Make sure that anti-aliasing is on, and it's trying to identify them by their names. Once that's done, secondary raise up, and then we bake. So now what it's done is it's essentially, process is called texture baking, and it's baking out that detail from the higher one to the lower one. Okay. So the ID map didn't come through, but that's all good. So now you can see already the, like, from the normal map and the ambient occlusion map, you see the details starting to come through. Right, so now we're just looking to add some base colors and foundations. For this example, we're not going to be polishing up in substance. We just want to add the basics. So just drag directly onto the layer thing. So like that, want the hammer to be metallic. So keep that as the ground or the basis. Add a mask so that we don't have it all over the gaff, and just paint, right? So this one, you don't need to be too precious. We just want the basics because we'll clean up some stuff in Photoshop later on. So you can rotate your canvas and paint onto it as well. So I want copper for some of the handles, or that kind of color. So just kind of laying down the foundation. Again, I'll decide later on as I'm tweaking it whether I want that to be the final look and stuff. The slight overlaps don't really matter too much at this point. We just need something to work from. So I'm kind of liking where it's going. Paint a little there. So if you guys do get a chance to use something like this, you can go as much as you want, but for speed, kind of being a bit loose with it, not really getting too particular, just kind of doing major parts for the most part. Okay, so I'm liking where that's going. So once I like the foundation, I just go to export out those textures. So find the place I want to export them out. Make a little folder so I know where they're going to be. And hit export. And what it's going to do is it's going to spit out the relevant files. and give us a good starting point for the next step. So once it's in there, we'll close this down and open up a viewer. So in my case, it's Marmoset Toolbag. And then just import the low model. Got to find it first. Complete handle low. So there's our model in the context of what would be a game engine. Just put material onto it and start matching it up. So the normal map, which basically is like a bump, so it makes it look more dense than it is. Change the sky dome just so I can see it a little better. And a gloss map, let's see if one of these works. But feel free to be experimenting at this stage. You're trying to basically find what works. You don't have to settle for it if it doesn't work. But albedo for the color map, gloss isn't doing too great, so I'll leave that off for now. It's kind of like it's super shiny like that for the time being. Ambient occlusion. This is just basically the little shadowing. Add a little bit more, just to bump it up. And sharpen it too, so you can see the bumps coming through. Okay. So quickly change the shading model, specular to metalness. Just has a bit more metallic. Add the metalness map to it. So it's getting there, especially with the gloss. So we just need to add a gloss map. Let's go back actually and test this out. Let's see if we can get the right effect. So I like that better. Let's go back to Photoshop. And we're going to open our texture. Okay, so if it doesn't open directly, just drag it in. So I'll find it off screen. Let's drag it through. Okay, so we want to just isolate some of the bits. And luckily there's a tool in Maya that lets you select the bit you want to isolate and create a selection as a texture. Okay, so we selected those bits. Go to UV snapshot. Make sure the resolution is cool. Give it a name and a location. And send that through. Drag it on. You guys can't see it because it's wireframe at the moment. And make the selection. Fill that with a color. So in this case, I want it to be kind of gold. And then if we save that over the top of our old one, go back to it, it's coming through. So that breaks it up a bit more, looks a bit better. Okay, so we want the bottom two to behave in the same way. So we select that, take another UV snapshot, give it a different name this time. Drag that on. Again, you guys can't see it because it's like a wireframe. Make it a selection. Go back to the old layer, add to it. So it's the same color and the same layer. So it's easier for housekeeping. Save over the top. PNG file. It's looking better. Like the bottom and the top, it's very royal. Okay, so now we want to look at the shininess too. So really the handle part is what we don't really want to be shiny. So we isolate that as well in the same way. Okay, go back. Bring in the metalness, or the roughness, should I say. Just mess with that a little bit. So just add, make sure that section is black, because anything that's white is actively shining. Anything that's black is not. Something like that. Like that. Save over the roughness. Apply the roughness to the gloss. Okay, so now we see completely kind of annihilated that bit that's not rough at all, which is what we wanted. We wanted that part to be a bit more like matte in finish. We want the rest to be more shiny, so we make it more closer to white, a bit more contrasty, maybe double it up. There you go. So now it's coming through. We'll mess with some of the post-processing. See what effects we can get. Similar with the ambient occlusion. So we like the shininess. Just want to bring it out a little bit more. So bring that, guys. Let's change the color on this too, actually. Make it a bit darker. Then going over the top means you see it kind of immediately because it gives you live updates. Maybe have a brighter background or something a bit more different. Slightly less reflection. And again, let's try the same thing with the ambient occlusion. Let's give this one a different name, just because it's more of a composite, so we don't really want to mess with the old one. So we just update this dude. So put the metallic in that, which I forgot to do. and the AO as well. Let's put that down. So let's see if we're using the right normal map. Yeah, we are. Bring back in the AO that we just made. Yeah. There you have it. I mean, if you guys will obviously have more time, you can do a lot more with it, but it's quite powerful. Using that workflow, you can make a lot of different things. So hope you enjoyed it, hope you had fun, and see you next time.